Throughout the long arc of history, humanity has looked up at the night sky, believing that everything drifting in the vastness above followed familiar laws of nature. But every so often, the universe sends us a visitor, one that shakes the very foundation of what we think we know. This year, it's happening again. An object named 3I Atlas, a traveler from the distant realms between the stars, is drawing closer to the Sunday, and on December 15th, 2025, it will reach its nearest point to Earth. Yet what scientists have discovered about it so far has sent a chill through the astronomical community. A celestial body emitting an industrial compound never before found in nature. An orbit so improbable it defies statistical logic. And a period when it will vanish completely behind the sun precisely at the most critical moment. A coincidence? Or something else? Tonight we'll explore the real data, the bold hypotheses, and the haunting gaps that leave us wondering. Is this truly a comet or something that was made? Join me as we journey into the story of 3I Atlas, the third interstellar visitor ever detected, and perhaps the greatest mystery humanity has ever faced. When astronomers first turned their telescopes toward 3I Atlas, they believed they were looking at just another comet, a drifting mass of ice and dust passing by the sun, like millions of others before it. But within only a few hours, the data they received shook the scientific world. What they were observing did not resemble any comet ever recorded. And from that moment, one question began to echo across observatories. What exactly is 3I Atlas? In its spectral light signature, scientists detected something utterly strange. Nickel tetracarbonyl, a compound known only from industrial metallurgy. On Earth, it can only be created through a reaction between nickel and carbon monoxide at extremely high temperatures. It does not occur naturally, cannot form in dust clouds, and has never been detected in any celestial body. An artificial compound emanating from an interstellar object? That alone was enough to force scientists to re-examine every assumption about its origin. Some attempted to find natural explanations, perhaps rare chemical reactions between nickel, carbon, and solar radiation could produce this anomaly. Yet under any theoretical model, the odds of the universe accidentally creating an industrial compound are virtually zero. It would be like tossing billions of random pieces of metal into the void and somehow ending up with a fully built spacecraft. But that was only the beginning. When the data was analyzed more deeply, an even more astonishing revelation appeared. There was no trace of iron in its emission spectrum. Iron, one of the most fundamental elements in the universe. It exists in planetary cores, meteorites, and in nearly every comet ever studied. Finding an object without iron was like discovering an ocean without water. So what is 3I Atlas made of? Why is it missing the most common metal in space? The only plausible explanation, and the one that sent a chill through the scientific community, was that its structure might not be natural at all. Some researchers describe that to lack iron and still remain stable, the object would have to be hollow inside, its thin outer shell coated with frozen dust like a massive spacecraft disguised as a comet. From the outside, it looks like a chunk of ice drifting through darkness. But within it, there could be an empty chamber, an intentional design, something humanity has never encountered. From here, the numbers began to tell their own story. The estimated mass of 3I Atlas is around 33 billion tons, many times heavier than an ordinary comet. And what makes it even more mysterious is that its motion follows gravity alone, showing no detectable perturbations. Normally, when a comet nears the sun, the heat causes sublimation, ice turns to gas, ejecting jets of vapor and dust that slightly alter its orbit. But 3I Atlas shows none of that. It doesn't evaporate. It doesn't grow a tail. It moves in perfect stability eerily, so as if guided by a precise navigation system, or perhaps by something intelligent within. Skeptics dismiss it as coincidence, saying that every celestial body has its own personality. But for those who have studied thousands of comets, this behavior is anything but normal. 3I Atlas doesn't just break the pattern of comets, it breaks our entire definition of what natural means. From that point, bold hypotheses began to emerge. Some suggested that 3I Atlas might be an interstellar probe, similar to how we once sent Voyager or Pioneer beyond our solar system. If an ancient civilization existed millions of years ago, they might have launched thousands of such probes to study distant stars. After hundreds of millennia drifting through space, one of them might have finally reached us, and 3I Atlas could be one of those remnants. Another theory, proposed by Harvard physicist Avi Loeb, speculates that the object could be a piece of ancient alien technology, much like Oumuamua, the first known interstellar visitor. Both share elongated shapes, inexplicable trajectories, and unusual light reflections. If this is true, then what we're seeing might be evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence, not a living civilization, but proof that it once existed. What's most intriguing, however, is not the data itself, but the silence that followed. NASA and major observatories released only minimal technical statements. Some say they're avoiding public panic, but in the scientific world, silence often means that something is being watched very, very carefully. Meanwhile, telescopes on Earth continue to collect light from the object. Its brightness flickers subtly as if reflecting off a slowly rotating metallic surface. Images from the Hubble Space Telescope show an offset in luminosity. The brightest spot isn't at the center, but about 50 kilometers to the side. It's nearly impossible to explain this through comet models, yet it aligns perfectly with the idea of a hollow body surrounded by a shell. All of this makes 3I Atlas a paradox of modern astronomy. It is too clean to be a comet, yet too motionless to be a natural rock. It bears the fingerprints of technology, yet drifts as if lifeless, a silent relic of the cosmos, quietly observing the worlds it passes. And if that is true, if this is not just a lump of frozen stone, but a machine of some kind, then with each passing day, it is drawing closer to Earth. We might already be within its field of observation, like small creatures on a blue world being watched from afar. The thought is both awe-inspiring and chilling. Yet perhaps the most unsettling part isn't 3I Atlas itself, but humanity's response to the unknown. When the universe presents us with a mystery, our first instinct is denial. We want reality to remain safe, familiar, predictable, but 3I Atlas doesn't belong to that comfort. It is the universe's reminder that we still know so little, and that beyond the light we see, there may be wonders far beyond imagination. So the next time you look up at the night sky, remember, among those billions of stars drifts a silent traveler carrying with it the riddle of life's own origin. And this is only the beginning. Join me next as we unravel the impossible coincidences that 3I Atlas seems to defy the very patterns that challenge the statistical laws of the cosmos itself. The chemical anomalies were only the tip of the iceberg. If 3I Atlas is truly different, then it is the way it moves through space that most confounds scientists. When every law of physics fails to explain something, people turn to mathematics where numbers can draw the line between what is random and what is intentional. And when astronomers began calculating the odds behind 3 Atlas's orbital features, they were stunned to realize the universe seemed to have arranged everything far too perfectly to be coincidence. Its orbit runs almost perfectly parallel to the ecliptic plane, the thin slice of space in which the planets circle the Sunday. That plane occupies only a minuscule fraction of three-dimensional space. The probability of an interstellar object, a wanderer from another star system aligning precisely with it, is roughly 1 in 500, meaning out of 500 visitors arriving randomly from elsewhere, only one would follow this exact path. And now, that one object is here, inside our solar system. At first glance, 1 inch 500 may not sound impossibly small. But the universe does not send us 500 interstellar travelers every century. In all of human history, only 3 have ever been confirmed: Oumuamua, Borisov, and now 3I Atlas. And only one of the 3 I Atlas travels almost perfectly parallel to the ecliptic. Placed in that context, the probability becomes absurd. Some scientists suggest coincidence or that gravitational forces from the planets bend its path, but to achieve such an exact alignment, the object would have had to adjust its orbit before entering the solar system before planetary gravity could affect it. Which leads to an audacious question: was that orbit chosen? The second anomaly is even stranger. 3I Atlas approaches Mars, Venus, and Jupiter almost simultaneously. If you imagine the solar system as a vast canvas, those 3 planets are merely tiny moving dots, each traveling at different speeds and distances. For a body arriving from deep space, with no prior link to any orbital plane, to pass near all three around the same time carries a probability of 1 in 20,000. Imagine throwing a stone from 10,000 kilometers away and having it fall precisely through 3 moving rings floating on a lake rings at different positions, each spinning at different speeds. That is the level of improbability we're talking about. Again, it could be random, but when you add up all the variables, direction, speed, inclination, timing, the pattern begins to look less like chaos and more like design. In computer simulations, astronomers generated millions of random interstellar trajectories. Almost none reproduced all 3 conditions simultaneously. A natural object typically cuts across the ecliptic at an angle and rarely passes close to even 2 planets, let alone 3. Yet 3I Atlas glides through them smoothly, precisely as if it were using planetary gravity to fine-tune its course, a maneuver we humans call gravity assist. If this is just a rock, it is the smartest rock the universe has ever made. And then comes the final coincidence, the one that renders all probability meaningless. Its perihelion, the moment it comes closest to the sun, happens exactly when the sun completely hides it from Earth's view. For 3 weeks from late October to mid-November 2025, every telescope on Earth will be blind to it. A near-perfect scenario. Just when it becomes closest, brightest, and most revealing, it disappears from sight. According to NASA's estimates, the chance of that alignment is about 1 in 30. That alone is small, but when multiplied with the previous odds, 1 in 500 and 1 in 20,000, the total becomes 1 in 300 million. In other words, if you simulated the solar system hundreds of millions of times, only once would the events align exactly as they do now. That's no longer coincidence. It's a statistical absurdity of pattern so ordered that probability itself rebels against the idea of chance. Some astronomers remain cautious. They say it could be a strange resonance of gravitational forces, or the byproduct of space-time stretching, or just a historic coincidence of timing. But others, the explorers, the ones unafraid to ask, see something more, a message. If a civilization were advanced enough to send an object into the solar system, it would want to hide during its most sensitive phase. It would choose a parallel orbit for easy observation of the planets. It would use gravitational assist to steer its path. And it would ensure that when it approached closest to the sun, the perfect moment to slow down or alter course, every telescope on Earth would be blinded by sunlight. Technically, that is the perfect profile of a covert mission. No ion engines, no thrust, just a flawless understanding of mathematics and orbital mechanics. Of course, no one can claim this as truth. Science doesn't run on belief, it runs on evidence. But probabilities tell stories. And sometimes, those stories are more provocative than the answers themselves. What makes 3I Atlas unsettling isn't that it threatens Earth. Its closest approach will still be over 170 million miles away, but that it forces us to question our place in the universe. Is it merely a drifting stone passing by chance? Or is it part of an ancient chain of observation, set in motion with a precision beyond nature's reach? If a watchmaker discovered a perfect mechanism in the middle of a desert, he wouldn't say it was shaped by wind and sand. He would know someone was here once, someone built this. Perhaps 3I Atlas is such a trace, not a greeting, but a silent proof of existence. And as it continues to drift quietly through space, the numbers remain 3 tiny probabilities, enough to stir the imagination of an entire species. Because perhaps, at times, the universe doesn't send us clear messages. It leaves us impossible coincidences, instead puzzles for the curious to solve. Join me in the next chapter as we uncover the strangest observational clues yet anomalies that will challenge every limit of science and reveal an even deeper picture of 3I Atlas. The chain of impossible coincidences we've just explored has led many to believe that 3 Atlas can no longer be regarded as a random object. When probability itself fails to explain a phenomenon within the bounds of science, a new lens must be found, a different way to look at the universe. And from that moment, a theory emerged, bold, unsettling, and profoundly eerie. 3I Atlas may not be a comet at all, but an artificial structure, a hollow interstellar vessel built with a purpose we have yet to comprehend. Imagine it, an object hundreds of meters, perhaps even kilometers long, drifting through the frozen dark. On the outside, it wears a cloak of dust and ice, deceiving every telescope into believing it's just a lifeless rock. But inside, beneath that fragile shell, there could be a hollow chamber once containing machinery, propulsion systems, or perhaps something that once lived. If an extraterrestrial civilization wanted to send a message, a letter, across millions of light years, this would be the perfect design, something that hides in plain sight, disguised as nature itself. The artificial hollow structure hypothesis began with small yet relentless inconsistencies that defied physics. Its unnatural orbital stability, absence of iron, emission of industrial compounds, immense mass, and uneven light reflection. Taken together, they paint a single picture. 3. Atlas was not merely formed, it was engineered, and perhaps designed to camouflage itself. Astrophysicists have compared this to a classical principle of spaceflight, the Oberth effect. When human spacecraft burn fuel at their closest point to the sun, they harness its immense gravity to achieve maximum velocity, multiplying their efficiency many times over. But in the case of 3I Atlas, some have proposed an inverse scenario, a reverse Oberth maneuver, a deliberate deceleration near perihelion. If this object were a ship, it might fire its engines not to accelerate but to slow down. Why? Because if it wished to remain within our solar system, instead of merely passing through like other interstellar objects, it would need to reduce its velocity relative to the Sunday, and the only moment to do that most efficiently is precisely when it's closest to the Sunday. The chilling part? That is also exactly when 3I Atlas will be completely hidden from Earth for 3 full weeks. No one will see what happens during that window. No telescope, no instrument, nothing. For those who lean toward the artificial theory, this is no coincidence, it's part of the plan. If true, 3I Atlas would not only be the first interstellar object detected by humanity, it could be the first interstellar spacecraft we've ever encountered. A hollow construct that may once have carried sensors, artificial intelligence, or perhaps something simpler, a cosmic time capsule sent millions of years ago, drifting silently between stars with a message from a civilization long extinct. Maybe it's no longer active, only an empty shell. But its very existence will still prove that somewhere, someone once knew how to travel farther than we ever have. As physicist Avi Loeb once said, if you see something that looks like a technological artifact, moves like a technological artifact, and reflects light like a technological artifact, you don't call it a rock. 3. Atlas may be that artifact in the desert, only this desert spans the entire universe. The hollow structure hypothesis isn't without scientific support. When astronomers analyzed its light curve, they found that its brightness fluctuated periodically, as if rotating around an axis, but the timing didn't match any natural cometary rotation model. The changes in reflectivity were uneven, implying a flat or hollow surface, not a dense spherical body. This is exactly the kind of light signature a large artificial panel, such as a solar array, would produce while slowly rotating near the Sunday. If we imagine an interstellar craft made of lightweight alloy, coated in frozen dust to mask its signature, the match to 3I Atlas's observed properties is uncanny. It reflects just enough light to pass for a comet, but not enough to fit any natural model perfectly. And if a conscious intelligence did design it, then they understood something we do not. The greatest wisdom of an observer is not to say, I am here, but to make others unsure whether you exist at all. When 3I Atlas vanishes behind the sun, perhaps it isn't merely coasting through perihelion. Perhaps it's changing direction, activating systems, or even sending signals beyond our range of perception. After all, we see only through the narrow window of visible light, while a far more advanced civilization might communicate through infrared, neutrinos, or other forms of energy our science cannot yet detect. To them, hiding behind the sun could be the perfect moment to restart a journey, to stay unseen, to remain untouched by the curious eyes of a young, fragile species on a blue planet. Of course, all of this remains speculation. No direct evidence proves that 3I Atlas is a ship, but none of the data disproves it either. And that is the fragile edge where this theory lives, between truth and possibility. Science cannot yet say yes, but it also cannot say no. The real question is no longer, do we believe, but do we dare to consider it? Because throughout history, the greatest discoveries began as ideas once mocked as impossible. When someone said the Earth floats in space, they were ridiculed. When humanity dreamed of reaching the moon, they were called foolish. And now, when someone asks if 3I Atlas could be a spacecraft, the first reaction is the same: impossible. But the universe has never cared about our disbelief. Perhaps 3I Atlas is nothing more than an extraordinary comet, or perhaps it's a legacy of intelligence that once surpassed us by millennia. Whatever it is, it reminds us that the universe will never run out of mysteries, and that sometimes the greatest wonder lies not in the answers we find, but in the courage to ask the question. Join me in the next chapter as we turn to the direct telescope observations, the newest data challenging the limits of human understanding and revealing what may be the deepest layer yet of the enigma called 3I Atlas. The hypotheses about an artificial hollow structure ignited the imagination of the world, but in science, belief is never enough. Only observation can verify truth. And so, humanity's most powerful telescope from Earth and from orbit turned their gaze toward 3I Atlas. The hope was simple. If it were truly artificial, then its reflected light, trajectory, or spectral composition would reveal subtle traces of design. Yet the deeper we looked, the stranger it became. The data didn't disprove the artificial theory, but neither did it confirm it. 3I Atlas behaved like something aware of the rules of discovery, leaving behind just enough ambiguity to mesmerize and disturb us at once. The first images from the Hubble Space Telescope stirred the astronomical community. In the photos, 3I Atlas appeared much like a classical comet, a bright core wrapped in a faint halo. But when scientists analyzed the direction of its tail, a paradox emerged. Instead of pointing away from the sun, as every comet does, the tail of 3I Atlas pointed toward it. That violates a fundamental law of physics. Solar radiation and solar wind always blow gas and dust outward, never inward. In other words, a comet cannot have a reverse tail. Researchers scrambled for explanations. Some proposed that rapid rotation might twist its tail backward. Others suggested a temporary reversal in solar wind flow. But no simulation could reproduce the real data. The effect only made sense if the light came from reflection, not emission, meaning the tail might not be dust or gas at all, but a glint of sunlight bouncing off a solid surface, perhaps metal or alloy. It was a daring thought, yet one that eerily matched the hollow ship model proposed earlier. If 3I Atlas were indeed a vessel, its outer shell could be coated with reflective material to deflect solar radiation. As it rotated, sunlight would flash across its surface, creating the illusion of a cometary tail, and if that reflection faced the sun, observers on Earth would see it as a reverse tail. What once seemed physically impossible now appeared suspiciously logical. As Hubble kept watching, the James Webb Space Telescope joined in, observing through infrared spectroscopy. The results made the mystery deeper still. Infrared readings revealed irregular fluctuations in brightness, not the steady patterns typical of natural comets. The light varied in smooth, rhythmic intervals, as though reflecting off a flat, slowly rotating surface. A gigantic solar panel? A metallic hull turning on its axis? No one could say for sure, but the resemblance was too close to ignore. Meanwhile, hundreds of millions of kilometers away, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, MRO, accidentally captured 3I Atlas as it crossed its camera's range. In the images, analysts detected a bright spot offset from the nucleus by about 50 kilometers. It didn't drift like dust, didn't fade, and remained stable for hours. Its intensity was far too strong for the surrounding area, as if sunlight were reflecting from a hollow cavity or mirrored metallic surface. Some speculated it was debris, but its motion was perfectly stable, almost as if it were part of a larger structure, or a compartment that briefly opened and then sealed again. No one could prove it, but every piece of data refused to fit neatly. Individually, each measurement made sense. Together, they contradicted one another. If 3I Atlas were a comet, its tail couldn't point toward the Sunday. If it were an asteroid, it shouldn't have a glowing halo. If it were a solid body, its reflected light wouldn't pulse with such precision. Every theoretical model came close, but never exactly matched. A German astronomer, after weeks of sleepless analysis, summed it up perfectly. It's like the data is alive, it behaves differently every time we look at it. Perhaps it's random. Perhaps it's the limit of our instruments. But to those who believe in the interstellar vessel hypothesis, this was no static object, it was responding. It seemed to react to test our ability to observe it, revealing just enough to provoke doubt, but never enough for certainty. Debates erupted across astronomy forums worldwide. One side claimed pure coincidence that nature is capable of infinite oddities. The other insisted it was artificial, a drifting relic from a long-lost civilization, wandering by chance through our system. And in between those extremes lay an unsettling truth. No one actually knew. Each new observation only deepened the puzzle, as if 3I Atlas were slipping beyond the framework of science itself. NASA, ESA, and other space agencies released the same verdict: inconclusive, no definitive evidence, no official denial. But that very silence made everything louder. No one dared to call it a spacecraft, yet no one dared to dismiss it either. Science stood on a thin line between knowledge and belief. Later Hubble images showed 3I Atlas dimming slightly, yet maintaining an impossibly stable orbit, as though guided by an unseen system preventing even a single degree of drift. In private research memos, scientists began referring to this phenomenon as engineered steadiness. The phrase was never included in public reports, but it surfaced repeatedly in closed conferences. After hundreds of hours of observation, all that remained was uncertainty. The data gave us no answers, only a haunting impression. A visitor from the deep, behaving as if it understood our gaze, and then drifting away in perfect silence. No explosion, no signal, no closure. Just a lingering question, powerful enough to shake our collective perception. If 3I Atlas is not a comet, then what is it? Join me as we continue deeper into the next chapter, where its chemical anomalies and mysterious light behavior will push science itself to the very edge of comprehension. The final images from Hubble and James Webb left behind a haunting emptiness, no satisfying explanations, only a collection of mismatched clues that left scientists both intrigued and unsettled. Yet as the telescopes fell silent, another window opened: chemical analysis. If the shape of 3I Atlas has sparked suspicion, then what emanated from within it would shake the very foundation of modern science. Here, the story crossed into its most incredible chapter, the unexplainable. From the spectroscopic data, the first result stunned researchers. The ratio of carbon dioxide to water vapor in 3 ETLAS was 8 times higher than any comet ever recorded. That number might sound technical, but in astronomy, it's an impossibility. Because water, not carbon dioxide, is the soul of a comet. For centuries, every comet observed has been made primarily of water ice mixed with organic compounds. CO2 usually makes up only a tiny fraction. But here, water was nearly gone, replaced by a frozen ocean of carbon dioxide. If true, 3I Atlas could not have formed in the icy outskirts of a star system like billions of other comets. It must have been born in a dry, hot, sealed environment. A place where water vapor couldn't exist, where CO2 could be compressed and stored as fuel. Sound familiar? That is precisely what humans do inside reaction chambers and spacecraft propulsion systems. Early theories suggested that perhaps 3I Atlas had once passed near a star, its water boiled away. But if that were the case, the object should have lost structural integrity, fragmented, or shown scorched traces in its spectrum. Instead, it remained intact, gliding smoothly on a perfectly balanced orbit. It didn't behave like a burned rock. It behaved like a self-regulating structure, built to survive extremes. Physicists at the Max Planck Institute wrote in their report, "It's as if the chemistry doesn't belong here." They didn't use the words alien or spacecraft, but the implication was enough to send a chill through the entire field. And just as the scientific community was wrestling with that anomaly, another appeared: the green light. Most comets reflect sunlight in pale white or faint yellow tones. A few rare ones glow green from carbon ions or cyanogen gas. But 3I Atlas was different. It emitted a pure, steady, emerald glow, not a scattered reflection, but a uniform, pulsating luminescence that seemed deliberate. When James Webb analyzed the spectrum, the green light didn't match any known natural compounds. No carbon chains, no cyanogen, no signs of ionized gas. Just light, cold, green, unnervingly stable. To those open to the artificial hypothesis, This was technological fingerprinting. Metallic alloys, when exposed to high energy radiation, often emit a green hue like titanium or nickel glowing under plasma excitation. Some specialists even suggested that within 3I Atlas there could be a cold energy system where controlled plasma reactions stabilized its internal temperature. If true, that green light might not be random at all, but the last heartbeat of an ancient machine. Traditional science, of course, resisted. Astronomers tried to explain each anomaly piece by piece. Perhaps 3I Atlas came from a chemically unique region of the Milky Way, or contained compounds not yet cataloged, or simply represented a bizarre coincidence of conditions. But the more maybes they proposed, the more tangled the picture became. Because every individual explanation made sense, yet together, they contradicted one another. How could an object be devoid of water, rich in CO2, missing carbon chains, and yet shine with an artificial green glow? No natural model could fit all of that at once. Every physical scenario broke apart at some point. And when science reached its limit, imagination stepped in. Perhaps 3I Atlas is the remnant of an interstellar device, a derelict probe that has drifted for millions of years, its energy long since fading, leaving behind only unstable chemical echoes. The CO2, then, might not be a native material, but the exhaust of a dormant system, and the green light, the final pulse of its dying core, flickering through the void like the last breath of a sleeping giant. It sounds like science fiction, yet every data point leans disturbingly in that direction. 3I Atlas behaves unlike any comet ever recorded, and every attempt to force it into a natural framework only highlights the absurdity. Perhaps the most frightening thing isn't that it's unexplainable, but that it relentlessly challenges how humanity defines reality itself. Because when we look up at the sky, we like to believe we're observing the universe through reason. But what if the universe is sending us a message and we're too determined to rationalize it away? A young scientist at Kyoto University once said during a seminar, perhaps the problem isn't the data, but the lens through which we interpret it. The words echoed through the silent room, because deep down, every scientist shares a quiet fear that the universe is answering us, and we simply lack the courage to understand the reply. Whether comet, asteroid, or ancient machine, 3I Atlas has become a mirror reflecting humanity's own curiosity back at itself. It reminds us that science isn't just about equations, but about the courage to seek meaning among impossibilities. Every spectrum, every trace of CO2, every pulse of green light is whispering something we haven't yet learned to hear. And as 3I Atlas drifts silently onward, leaving behind unanswered questions, perhaps its silence is the message, a communication not through words or sound, but through the beautiful contradiction of the unexplainable itself. Join me next as we move toward December 15, 2025, the day when this interstellar visitor will pass closest to Earth, and perhaps for the first time, the universe will allow us a fleeting glimpse of what hides behind that emerald light. The final measurements of the green light and the anomalous CO2 ratio left the entire scientific community suspended in a state of anticipation. It was as if humanity stood before a cosmic door about to open everyone, knowing that the answer waited on the other side, yet no one possessing the key. Each new observation of 3I Atlas only deepened the mystery, and now every hope converged on a single moment, December 15th, 2025. That is when the object will make its closest approach to Earth, a mere 170 million miles away, and the entire planet will look toward one point in the sky, wondering if all our doubts will crystallize into truth. Months in advance, the world's great observatories began their preparations. Hubble, James Webb, Gemini, and dozens of ground-based telescopes were assigned the highest observation priority. Never before in history has a single object been studied with such coordinated precision. Not only scientists, but the public, the media, and stargazers across the globe have begun counting down. Because on that day, we will not simply be observing a comet, we may be facing the most mysterious interstellar visitor humanity has ever known. The mission's goal is clear: determine whether 3I Atlas behaves as a natural object or not. If it is a comet, its orbit will follow pure gravitational motion, predictable, stable, unwavering. But if it adjusts its path, even by a fraction of a degree, that will prove some form of internal navigation. Just one deviation beyond natural physics, and the natural hypothesis collapses. Yet the importance of December 15th goes beyond science. It is symbolic the first time in human history we might confront an interstellar object in real time, not through numbers or archived data, but through direct, living light. As one Cambridge astronomer put it, it feels like waiting for a cosmic door to open, not knowing whether what's behind it is light or darkness. 3 questions guide the entire campaign. 1. Does 3I Atlas adjust its own orbit? 2. Does it display signs of artificial structure such as reflective symmetry, axial rotation, or rhythmic light modulation? 3. Most importantly, does it transmit any form of radio signal? Since late 2024, the SETI Global Radio Network has been on full alert, listening across every frequency imaginable. Hundreds of antennas from the deserts of Nevada to the plateaus of Chile are aimed skyward, ready to detect even the faintest whisper beyond the background noise. If 3I Atlas truly is a vessel, even a dormant one, then the moment it nears the sun, bathed in energy, could be the moment it awakens. And if that happens, a single pulse, no matter how faint, would answer a question humanity has asked for centuries. But with hope comes fear, because no one knows what happens if 3 Atlas turns out to be more than a rock. As one physicist at Caltech wrote in an internal memo, the moment we confirm it's artificial, everything we know about our place in the universe will change. It will no longer be a question of origin, but of meaning. Still, science remains calm in the face of the unknown. Teams have divided their work. One tracks orbital mechanics, another studies light spectra, a third listens for transmissions, and the last, called the Cosmic Sentinels, simply waits. They know that the day may end in silence, but in that silence might lie the greatest answer of all. Astronomers predict that around 3:27 UTC, 3I Atlas will reach perigee, its nearest distance to Earth. For several hours, every instrument will collect synchronized data, spectral, radiative, and radio. An ocean of information will pour into control centers around the world, and in that instant, humanity, knowingly or not, will share a single moment, watching a faint glimmer among the stars and waiting for something miraculous. Some believe nothing will happen, that 3I Atlas will glide past quietly, just another comet fading into the dark. But others believe the universe never sends meaningless things, that perhaps the true purpose of this event is not in the object itself, but in the act of looking up, of asking, of listening, because science is not merely the search for answers, it is the courage to wait for the unknown. By the final weeks of 2025, the world will have changed. Whether 3I Atlas proves to be comet or craft, silent or speaking, the moment will be remembered as the day our planet looked skyward together. Amid Earth's noise and chaos, millions will share a single feeling, small, fragile, yet filled with hope. And perhaps that is what the universe intended all along, to remind us that in the vast darkness of space, the most precious thing is not the answer, but our ability to ask if we are alone. December 15th, 2025 will not be just an astronomical milestone. It will be a spiritual threshold, a moment when human curiosity touches the silence of the cosmos. And when the countdown reaches 0, when the green light of 3I Atlas glimmers once more across the night sky, perhaps we will receive the first message from a distant intelligence, or perhaps only the echo of our own longing, a reminder that in the infinite vastness of space, what defines us is not our power, but our relentless desire to know we are not alone. And then, as December 15th approached, the world seemed to hold its breath. The first frames from Hubble, James Webb, and Gemini began streaming back to Earth, faint lines of light, dense clouds of data, each pixel studied in silence, under a single question echoing in every mind. What is 3I Atlas? But even with technology at the peak of human achievement, there remained a boundary that could not be crossed. We could see the light it reflected. We could calculate the orbit it followed, but we could not see through the shell that concealed it. And it was there in the gap between seeing and understanding that science met the edge of its own horizon. No matter how much data we gathered, no matter how many lenses stared upward, the truth still hid in darkness. No radar, no probes, no return signal. Only one thing: light. Light that had traveled hundreds of millions of miles through frozen emptiness, reflected, refracted, scattered, before falling onto our fragile sensors on Earth. Every photon recorded was a fragment of memory, a ghostly whisper from something no one could touch, no one could truly know. It sounds simple, but that limitation made everything fragile. Modern science depends on data, yet our data skims only the surface. It's like trying to understand a book by staring at its cover, or to measure the depth of the ocean by watching the ripples on top. We can describe color, brightness, reflection rate, but beneath the cold shell of 3i Atlas, we have no idea what exists. Scientists once debated launching a small ion-propelled probe to intercept the object, but the distance was too vast, the cost astronomical, and time merciless. By the time a probe could reach it, 3i Atlas would already be decades beyond the solar system. Even radar scans proved impossible. At 170 million miles, the returning signal would drown in cosmic noise, and if its surface were metallic or hollow, the waves wouldn't penetrate anyway. It was like a mirror that refused to speak, returning everything we sent to it with the same cold reflection of silence. That both the beauty and the terror of science lies right there. We can measure the speed of light, calculate planetary orbits, and yet still be blind to what lies inside the very object passing before our eyes. It's a humbling realization that in the age of artificial intelligence and quantum precision, there are still places where human understanding cannot reach. We know so much and yet understand so little. During those final hours of observation, astronomers faced a rare feeling, the smallness of awareness itself. They knew every theory was only conjecture because all we ever saw was reflected light, a two-dimensional echo of a three-dimensional mystery. Even if we captured millions of images, each pixel precise to the millisecond, we were still outside, staring into a secret we could never unlock. An astrophysicist at the European Space Agency wrote in his journal, "The more we see, the less we understand. The light shows everything, yet reveals nothing." It was more than a scientific admission, it was a quiet philosophy. For 3i Atlas had forced humanity to confront itself, that no matter how far we go, no matter how powerful our instruments become, we remain prisoners of perception. We can measure the distance to the stars, but not touch their essence. We can describe the mechanics of the universe, but not understand why it exists this way. And perhaps that is the real message of 3i Atlas. A gentle reminder from the cosmos that knowledge is only the surface of understanding, and that the deeper realm, the soul of things, remains a sacred space we can sense, but never fully enter. The teams continue listening, scanning radio frequencies, searching for a whisper, a rhythm, a pulse, but there was nothing. No sound, no beat, no echo, only the vast, crushing silence of space, a silence heavy enough to feel intelligent, because if 3i Atlas were truly artificial, then that silence might not be emptiness. It might be intention. Perhaps it doesn't wish to be found. Or worse perhaps, there's no one left to speak. On a deeper level, that silence mirrored our own longing. We search endlessly for answers, and the universe responds with stillness, as if saying, "I will not reveal my secret," until you learn to ask the right question. When the last data streams reached the control centers, scientists sat quietly before their screens. No revelation, no shock, just endless lines of spectral light, proof of existence, but not of meaning. 3i Atlas remained as silent as when it first appeared, slipping away into the dark, carrying with it questions that science could not yet frame. Some felt disappointment, others relief. A few wept from the bittersweet feeling of having touched something immense, only to feel it drift beyond reach again. Because sometimes, truth isn't something to be seen. It's something to be accepted as unseen. And as 3i Atlas shrank into the distance, fading from every telescope, it left behind not a secret but a lesson. That in our pursuit of the cosmos, the greatest barrier is not distance, but the invisible threshold between observation and understanding. We have seen so much, and yet we are still walking through darkness. Join me next as we step into the next chapter, where belief, skepticism, and fear within the scientific community collide, sparking one of the most profound intellectual confrontations in human history. As 3I Atlas drifted away, leaving behind only empty data streams and perfect silence, the scientific world could no longer remain still. No one had evidence strong enough to prove anything, yet no one could disprove what they had seen. And in that silence, a rift began to form between those who believed science must be brave enough to ask dangerous questions, and those who sought to preserve the safety of established knowledge. The debate over 3I Atlas had officially begun. The spark came from Avi Loeb, the renowned astrophysicist at Harvard University, the same man who once stirred global controversy by suggesting that Oumuamua, the first confirmed interstellar visitor, might have been artificial. Now, with 3I Atlas, he stepped once again beyond the cautious boundaries of academia and stated plainly, "Based on the data, I would rate 3I Atlas a 5 to 6 out of 10 on the artificiality scale." It was a provocative statement. In the world of science, where every claim must be supported by thousands of measurements and hundreds of peer reviews saying it might be artificial, was like throwing a stone into a still lake. The ripples spread instantly. Some researchers called Loeb a dreamer. Others accused him of seeking attention. But beneath all the noise, one truth lingered. He had voiced what everyone else was quietly thinking. Because inside silent laboratories, many scientists felt the same unease. The data didn't add up. The light behaved strangely. The chemical ratios were absurd. The reverse tail defied physics. 3I Atlas seemed to mock every model ever written. Yet to say publicly this might be a spacecraft was perilous not only for one's career, but for the credibility of science itself. In a world built on caution, conservatism became both armor and chain. Traditional scientists argue that invoking the idea of artificiality was a double-edged sword. If wrong, it would erode public trust in science. If right, it would force all of human knowledge to be rewritten. So they chose silence. But Loeb, a man who had already seen where fear ends, stepped across that line. He said, "Science doesn't advance by silence. It advances by asking the questions others are afraid to ask." That was the beginning of an intellectual confrontation, not just about 3I Atlas, but about what discovery itself means. On one side stood the traditionalists, who believed science must remain grounded in data, emotionless, methodical, free of speculation. On the other stood the explorers, who believed imagination is the engine of revelation. Two worlds clashing, reason against wonder, safety against curiosity, the very forces that have always defined the human spirit. Younger researchers began to rally behind Loeb. They argued that science had become too cautious, too afraid of being wrong. "We can't keep treating imagination as the enemy." One young physicist from ESA wrote, "If Galileo, Newton, or Einstein lived today, they'd be labeled crazy too." The conservative camp, meanwhile, warned that labeling unproven phenomena as artificial risked turning science into mythology draped in mathematics. To them, Loeb's openness was dangerous, a breach in the wall of rigor. And yet, that very tension made 3I Atlas more important than ever, because it was no longer just a mystery in the sky. It had become a mirror, reflecting how humanity faces the unknown. Some saw opportunity, others threat. Some wanted to reach, others wanted to retreat. But all were caught in the same invisible gravity, the pull of curiosity. Ironically, the more institutions avoided the question, the more the public demanded answers. Every vague NASA or ESA statement triggered waves of speculation online. Why won't they say more? Are they hiding something? If it's not a ship, why the silence? In that vacuum, belief drifted toward those willing to speak. Loeb, with his calm tone and daring words, became a reluctant symbol, a voice for those who refused to let fear dictate thought. Despite criticism, he stood firm. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, but ignoring anomalies is not science either. That sentence drew a fault line through the scientific world. One half chose certainty, the other, curiosity. One feared losing credibility, the other saw a chance to expand understanding itself. And between them, 3I Atlas floated silently, as if observing the very species arguing about its nature. At international conferences, when the question arose, could it be artificial? A hush often followed. Everyone knew that even a nod could jeopardize a career. But in that silence, a truth became clear. Science is not just the pursuit of data, it is the courage to confront the limits of what we think we know. And so, as 3I Atlas moved beyond the sun's reach, the debate did not fade. Years from now, even after it disappears into interstellar space, people will still speak of it, not just as a strange object, but as a moment when science was forced to look into its own heart, fear or curiosity, silence or the courage to ask. Join me next as we step into the final chapter, where every theory, from scientific to philosophical, will converge upon one haunting question. If 3I Atlas truly is a ship, then why did it come here? The debate between believers and skeptics of 3I Atlas continued long after the object had left the sun's influence. There were no conclusions, no final proofs, only scattered fragments of light and theories built and broken in turn. Yet within that uncertainty, science was forced to ask its most important question. If 3I Atlas is truly a spacecraft or merely a natural comet, what does that mean? That question opened two parallel scenarios, one grounded in physics, the other born of imagination, and both compelled humanity to confront itself. Scenario 1, the natural wonder. If 3I Atlas is a natural comet, it remains one of the most extraordinary gifts the universe has ever sent us. With its immense mass, strange orbit, and anomalous chemistry, it could force astronomers to rewrite large sections of planetary and cometary formation models. Perhaps it is a fragment from the far rim of the Milky Way, a region shaped by chemistry and gravity unlike anything near Earth. In that case, every photon reflected from its surface is more than just light. It is a fossil of time, a relic from billions of years ago, when stars died and were reborn, when heavy elements crystallized into cosmic dust, and when the first planetary seeds began to coalesce. 3I Atlas would then be a letter from the ancient universe, carrying within it the story of our own origin. By studying it, humanity might better understand how life could form around other suns, and perhaps, hidden within the data, find the first hints of a universal recipe for life itself. Imagine, millions of years ago when 3I Atlas was ejected from its native system, it began a lonely odyssey across the void, drifting past alien stars, watching civilizations rise and fade beneath unfamiliar suns. And now, after eons of silence, it passes through our solar system, asking without words, are you still listening to the universe? If it is purely natural, then its coincidence of arrival is what makes it miraculous, a cosmic alignment so improbable that it reignites our own thirst to question and to wonder. Sometimes, meaning doesn't reside in the answer is born the moment the question is asked. Scenario 2, the artificial messenger. But then comes the second possibility, the one more unsettling yet impossible to dismiss. If 3I Atlas is an artificial construct, it might be an ancient interstellar probe, sent long ago by a civilization older than our species, perhaps older than our planet itself, a machine, not a vessel of passengers, designed to travel in silence, to gather data, to observe and to remember. Its creators may no longer exist, their stars may have gone cold, but their message or their curiosity endures in motion. Just as we once launched the Voyager probes, carrying sounds and images of Earth into the cosmic ocean, perhaps someone, somewhere in the galaxy, once did the same. And if 3I Atlas is indeed their Voyager, its arrival here marks a meeting between two civilizations, one still breathing, one long gone. Inside that hollow frozen shell, there might once have been delicate sensors, now silent relics of extinct technology. Perhaps it no longer transmits, yet still follows a mathematically perfect orbit, still passes planets with impossible precision, as if continuing a mission it was programmed to complete long after its makers disappeared. A quiet observer of the stars, traveling from system to system, recording the universe but never interfering. If that is true, then 3I Atlas is a mirror reflecting humanity's own future. For one day, our Voyagers too will drift too far, lose their signals, and wander in the dark waiting to be found by eyes that are not ours. And when those distant beings see our machine, they too will ask, who made this and why? Both scenarios natural or artificial share one truth. They humble us. If it is natural, it reminds us how small we are before the elegance of the cosmos. If it is artificial, it shows that intelligence is not our monopoly, that we are merely one link in a chain of minds stretching through time and stars. In either case, 3I Atlas becomes a mirror of our limitations, forcing us to confront the possibility that life, knowledge, and curiosity are not Earth's privilege, but the universal law of existence itself. The saddest or perhaps most beautiful truth is that we may never know. 3I Atlas is already leaving the solar system, carrying secrets beyond the reach of our machines. In a few short years, it will fade into the black, a dream dissolving at the edge of sight, leaving us with only the faint memory of something extraordinary. And maybe that very uncertainty is what gives this story its meaning. For 3I Atlas is not just an object in space, it is a test of human curiosity. It forces us to choose, to accept silence, or to keep searching, to keep asking where we belong in the grand design of the universe. And so, as the last glimmer of 3I Atlas disappears among the stars, the story does not end, because every generation that looks up at the night sky will ask again, have we been observed? Is there another gaze, distant and unseen, watching us as we once watched it? Perhaps the universe is repeating a single endless story, a chain of watchers and wanderers, each passing the torch of curiosity through the darkness, ensuring that the light of wonder never truly fades. 3I Atlas is gone, now shrinking into the night of space like a faint spark dissolving into infinity. The telescopes have stopped tracking, the scientific papers have slowed, and humanity has returned to its daily noise. But for those who followed its journey, one question still echoes. Did we just witness a comet? Or something beyond human understanding? That question has no answer, and perhaps never will. Yet within that uncertainty lies the very essence of science itself. When 3 Atlas vanished behind the sun, humanity learned a quiet truth. There are secrets the universe doesn't want to reveal, only to teach us how to listen. And listening isn't about instruments or data, it's about humility. No matter how vast, science is not the road to absolute certainty. It is the endless voyage of temporary answers across the sea of the unknown. Those who watched the last data streams of 3I Atlas understood that deeply. They realized that all we ever truly do is infer. No one knows what 3I Atlas is, because the universe is not built from answers, it is woven from layers of questions. Each time we think we've grasped truth, it steps one level further away, inviting us to redefine what it means to know. And perhaps that is the final message 3I Atlas leaves behind. A lesson written not in words, but in silence. A silence that reminds us certainty is an illusion, and doubt is the foundation of understanding. Figures like Avi Loeb, controversial as they are, remind us that if humanity only believes what can be proven, we will only travel as far as proof allows. But if we dare to believe in even the smallest possibility, we may unlock the greatest truths. For the real danger is not in being wrong, it is in stopping the question. From Galileo to Einstein, from those who defied the idea of an Earth-centered universe to those who discovered invisible particles, every leap forward began with a refusal to accept the obvious. 3I Atlas, in its own quiet way, has become a symbol of that same courage, a test of whether we still have the strength to believe in what cannot yet be proven, and the curiosity to refuse silence as an answer. In an interview after 3I Atlas disappeared from observation, Avi Loeb said a line that still lingers: "The real danger for science is not being wrong, but being certain." That sentence feels like a farewell to 3I Atlas. Because perhaps what made it so mysterious wasn't its distance, but the fact that it forced us to face the limits of certainty itself. As science matures, it no longer seeks absolute belief, but learns to exist in that twilight between knowing and not knowing, where every question is a lantern, and every limit an invitation to transcend it. If 3I Atlas was only a comet, then it has still fulfilled a great mission to remind us how much we have yet to understand. But if it was a vessel, a creation of some distant intelligence, then its passing was not just an event in astronomy, but the first conversation between two civilizations, one that spoke through light and one still learning how to listen. Yet the paradox is that both versions lead to the same truth. We cannot advance by chasing certainty. Certainty is where curiosity dies. Doubt is where understanding begins. In the vast expanse of space, where every star is only a flicker in the ocean of night, we exist not because we know the universe, but because we keep asking it. There was a moment during the final night of observation when 3I Atlas was just a dim speck on the screen. A young astronomer whispered, "Maybe it's not leaving us. Maybe it's waiting to see if we'll follow." That simple, haunting line captured everything 3I Atlas meant. It wasn't an answer, it was an invitation. An invitation for humanity to continue, for science to keep risking, for us to look outward and inward with equal wonder. Because the universe, in the end, is not just the space beyond us, it is the mirror reflecting the curiosity within us. And perhaps that is the true meaning of the thing about certainty. In this world, everything we take as obvious can be overturned. Even our ideas of life, intelligence, and limitation may tremble, all because of one silent traveler drifting through the dark. 3I Atlas is gone, but its echo remains not in the data or the images, but in the questions it left behind. It reminds us that the greatest act of science is not to know, but to admit that we do not yet know. Only by embracing uncertainty do we begin the real journey, not just to understand the universe, but to understand ourselves within it. And so, the story of 3 Atlas closes, a quiet streak of light across the night, arriving, departing, leaving behind 1,000 questions that no one can answer with certainty. Perhaps it was only ancient ice. Perhaps it was the relic of a forgotten intelligence. But whatever it was, it made us look up, not just with our eyes, but with the curious hearts of humankind. The universe doesn't need to speak. Its silence is a language, one that forces us to ask, to seek, to imagine. 3I Atlas may have left the solar system forever, but in that brief passing, it reconnected us with the oldest feeling of all, the desire to know, even when knowing is impossible. Science doesn't promise certainty, only the pursuit of light within darkness. And it is on that journey, not at its destination, that humanity becomes truly magnificent, not because we've reached the stars, but because we never stop trying to understand why they shine. So if somewhere out there in the endless sky, another set of eyes is watching Earth, perhaps they too will see what 3 Atlas showed us, that even the smallest beings, in their fragility, are capable of seeking meaning in the infinite. Thank you for walking this journey with me. If you wish to keep exploring the mysteries of the cosmos, where science meets wonder and silence becomes story, subscribe, leave a small star in the comments, and I'll see you in the next episode of Bedtime Science Stories, where together we fall asleep beneath a sky full of the unknown.